Hello guys, so in this video I will explain you about what is Python objects and classes. So you should be knowing that in Python everything is object. Say whether it is a list or it is dictionary or tuple or integer value like 20 or 30 or 40, these are also object. Functions, you create any function, simple print function, that is also an object. So before going into the object, there is the basics behind that. So if you see that 20, so 20 is an integer, but it is also an object in Python. So there is a class of integer, and when you take 20, that is called the instance. But since it is an instance of the type int class, it is equivalent to 20 is an object. That means an int object. If we are taking like 20.5, and that is then a float class. So we are not going into all those things, but the thing is everything in Python is an object. So if you're taking any value, numeric value 20 or 30, that is also an object. But it comes, where does it comes from? It comes from the background of classes. And 20, or whenever you take any number 20, so you write int in the background, it is written as int of 20. So it is actually instance of the type int class. So int is also a class. So what is a class? So the question now comes that what is class? Class is actually a group which defines certain properties. Like say you are defining some customer class, and say you have different customers. Maybe say you have banking customers, agriculture customer, insurance customers. Say just make it simple, just you have 3 customers and they have different names, say customer A, customer B, customer C, and they have some sales associated with each other. So it would be sales 1, sales 2, sales 3. So instead of writing it like repeating customer A has sales this, customer B has sales this, customer C has sales this, we define a class. Say if we had 1,000 of such customers, it's not possible to write it like that. So for that purpose we had to create some system which can incorporate such kind of things. So they are having a similar kind of properties like customer. So first of all, when you define any class, we use the keyword class. Then we write the name of the class. It can be anything. Here we are taking as customer, so that is the name of the class, and then we write colon, and then we define the function. So first function is the init function, and when you write the init function, you should have this 2 times this colon, this 2 times, and so that you have this init function, and inside this init function what you write is self. So that is a keyword which you need to write, and then what you write is the properties which you are going to associate with the customer class. So that first is the customer class, second is the sales. You could add more properties with that or arguments with this class, or say maybe the customer age or how old the customer is, you can include as number of properties to this as you want. So I'm talking in a simple layman language. So once it is defined, now you define init class. Now what you do is you write self dot whatever the first property is, that is the customer name. You write self dot customer name is equal to customer name, and then you write self dot sales is equal to sales. I will explain you why we are writing this in few minutes, but just remember this first piece of code where you just write the self inside init, and then you write the names of all the properties or arguments, and then you write self dot customer first property name is equal to property name, self dot second property name is the second property name, like that. And then you can define n number of functions, whatever is required, whatever the purpose of customer class you need. But I'm just defining one just for demonstration. We are writing sales in next month, and then in this function I'm giving an argument self, so that I can refer to the self properties. So what you're doing is you are returning self dot sales square. So in the next month the sales becomes double. So when you want to access the sales of this, you will write self dot sales. Now our class is defined. Just to select this and shift enter. Now let's come to the object thing or instance thing. So once the class is completed, now you can create thousands of instances of this class by having different properties of customer name and sales. Whatever the customer name and sales you would be having for that instance, it will give accordingly the sales in the next month, because each of the customer name and each of the sales will be different for each of the instances. So how you take the instance, how you create the instance? When you write the instance, say we are taking the customer A, how you define the customer instance? You will write customer. Inside that you give the property names. So first property name is customer name. Say the customer name is A, and then you give the sales. Say I have taken 5,000. So customer A is now a instance of the customer class, and the properties have been defined here by giving the input values. So now the customer name is A and the sales value is 5,000. Now if you want to access the values of sales or customer name, how you would access? The object is customer A and the properties name is customer A, which you have written here, the self dot customer name, self dot sales. So you will write customer A dot customer name, customer A dot sales. These are the properties. And here this is a convention that you write self, so that you understand this is a conventional universal convention you have to write, so that you can store the values of the instances in the self, and you can take it in other different functions. You can write n number of functions inside the class. So now if you write like this and shift enter, you get the print. Customer name is A, customer A sales is this. Now say if you want to write, you want to define another instance, say customer B. Let's define customer B. Again the class name is customer, and say that customer name is B, and say the sales is 4,000. Now say if you want to define the customer B customer name and customer B sales, so see what's it comes. So the customer B instance is defined by using the customer class. Its property is customer name is B and sales is 4,000. Now you have printed here, it is customer name is B and sales is this. So why we are using? Because we can from this class we do not have to write a function n number of times for each of the customer, because you have already defined init function, and init function is there for that purpose. So init is actually known as the initialization method, or a class constructor, Why we are saying constructor? Because as soon as you run this class, you call the class using class name, whatever the arguments you give in the init, those are run and gets stored. So when you write customer A is equal to customer A comma 5,000, you call the class, and once it is called, first function which is run is the constructor function, class constructor function, that is the init function. So these values A and 5,000 goes here, customer name and sales, and then it gets stored here. Self means whatever the customer A you are taking, you are giving the values, those gets stored in this. And from now onwards, whatever the functions you write, there all the values will be according to the customer A, not according to the customer B. So whatever the functions you write in like sales in next month, self will depend upon the customer A or customer B or customer C. So here customer sales is given 5,000 because it is the property of customer A. Here it is showing 4,000 because it is the property of customer B. So this sales vary according to the properties. So whatever the instance you are giving. So customer, this is customer A, that is one instance. Customer B, this is second instance. You can define n number of instances. Similar wise, there is an integer class. There again there is an int function, that is a constructor class, and so on. So when you define the instance, that is an object. So customer A is also an object here. Customer B is also an object. So these are object, but in turn they are instances of these class. So this is a very simple demonstration of how you can define a class, because Python is an object oriented programming where everything is revolving around the objects. So everything is an objects, even the functions, even the class. Even the class is also an instance of a meta class, which is named by type. So if you see, so every object has a type. So if you have any integer value and you want to see the type of that integer value, it will give the type of that integer, that will be int. If you take the here the class, then the type of any class, simple class, is a type. So this type is different from the type function which we use. So it should be clear. Now here if you see the customer A and you want to see the customer A type, so customer A type will be the customer class, because we are using the customer class. So you should remember that once the class is defined, then you take the instances, you give the values, whatever the values you want to give, and you can use accordingly, and all the values which you give in the instance, those get utilized in the further functions inside the class. So this is a very simple thing. Now there are some functions which you can use for objects, instances of that class. Say get attribute for customer A. So sales. So sales value is 5,000. So customer A sales attribute is 5,000. So that will give the this. Has attribute. Does customer A instance has this attribute? Yes, because we have defined two attributes. The one is customer A name and the second is sales. Set attribute, customer A instance you have defined, you have sales. Earlier you have the sales of 5,000. Now you are setting that attribute to 1,000. So set attribute. Once you have set it, you have set this value sales to 1,000. Now if you check the customer A sales, it is now 1,000. Earlier it was 5,000. Now you can also get use the get attribute function. Now it is showing 1,000. You got? So get attribute gives the value of that. You can access by using the get attribute of object and whatever the attribute you want to take, or you can write like that instance name dot the attribute name. These are the two ways you can take the find the values of any argument of the instance. Now also there are class attributes. One is doc, name, module, basis, dictionary. That is not commonly used. You do not require right now, but if you want to print, you can use it. Doc is documentation. The documentation you can provide for the class here within the quoted quotes. Whatever I have not given any documentation here, so it is none showing here. Just showing documentation is none, but the class name is customer, which is shown here, class customer, and then module. So module is simple module, and basis module is this main module, and the basis is this class object. So dictionary, it shows all the things here, documentation, module, functions names, and the objects whatever you have defined here inside this class, so you can have the values. So most important thing is to keep in mind is that in Python we write the classes, then we create the instances, and everything is object oriented. So in the next videos I will be explaining more about these classes and inheritances. and other properties of this object oriented programming. So thanks for watching this video, and please do not forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.